I thought I knew everything about the house where I grew up. Every creaky floorboard, every corner where dust collected, every hiding spot my brother and I used during childhood games. But last month, during what was supposed to be a peaceful family visit, my 12-year-old daughter Emma proved me completely wrong. We don't visit my parents often anymore. Life gets busy, you know. Work, school activities, the constant juggling act of modern parenting. But when mom called saying they missed the grandkids, I felt that familiar pang of guilt. So I packed up Emma and her younger brother Jake for a weekend at Grandma and Grandpa's house. The kids were excited. They loved that old Victorian house with its endless rooms and mysterious corners. To them, it's like a mansion from a fairy tale, full of possibilities for adventure. To me, it's just home, familiar, predictable, safe. Saturday afternoon, while mom was cooking and dad was showing Jake his workshop, Emma disappeared downstairs. She's always been the explorer of the family, the one who notices things others miss. I was helping mom with dinner when I heard her voice from the basement. Mom, can you come down here for a second? Her tone was strange, not scared exactly, but careful, deliberate. The way she sounds when she's trying not to alarm anyone, but definitely needs an adult. I found her standing in the far corner of the basement, near the old shelving unit where Dad keeps his painting supplies. She was holding her phone's flashlight, illuminating something I'd never noticed before. Look, she said, pointing to a gap between two shelf units. There's a door here. At first, I thought she was imagining things. The basement lighting has always been terrible, creating shadows that could trick the eye. But when I followed her flashlight beam, I saw it too. A small wooden door, maybe 4 feet high, painted the same dingy beige as the basement walls. It was positioned perfectly to be hidden by the shelving angle, unless you were looking from exactly where Emma was standing. That's weird, I said, crouching down beside her. I've never seen this before. The door had a simple brass knob, tarnished with age, no lock that I could see. Emma looked at me with those bright, curious eyes that had gotten her into trouble more times than I could count. Can we open it? She asked. Every parental instinct told me to say no. Strange doors in old houses usually lead to spider-infested crawl spaces or forgotten storage areas filled with decades of dust and probably mice. But my own curiosity was piqued. How had I never noticed this door in all my years living in this house? Okay, I said, but stay behind me. The knob turned easily, too easily for a door that should have been stuck with disuse. As it swung open, I was hit immediately by a smell that didn't belong in a musty basement, something clean and chemical, like the industrial cleaners they use in hospitals. Emma's flashlight revealed a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. The steps were wooden but looked newer than the rest of the basement, and they were clean, suspiciously clean. Mom, Emma's voice was smaller now. Should we go down? I hesitated. This felt wrong somehow. But we'd come this far, and turning back without investigating felt like cowardice. Besides, this was my childhood home. What could possibly be dangerous? Just a few steps, I said. If it's just storage, we'll come right back up. The staircase was longer than it should have been. By my count, we descended at least 15 steps, which would put us well below the basement level. The walls were concrete, painted white, and the air grew cooler as we went down. At the bottom, Emma's flashlight revealed something that made my breath catch. It wasn't a storage room, it was an office. A fully functioning, meticulously organized office with a desk, filing cabinets, a computer, and multiple monitors. The walls were covered with corkboards displaying what looked like maps, photographs, and documents. Everything was clean, dust-free, and clearly in regular use. Mom, Emma whispered, what is this place? I didn't answer because I was staring at the photographs on the wall. Pictures of people I didn't recognize, but taken in locations I did. Our neighborhood, the local shopping center, the kids' school. Some photos had red circles drawn around certain individuals. Others had notes written in my father's careful handwriting. My hands were shaking as I approached the desk. The computer was off, but there were neat stacks of papers, all bearing official letterheads I recognized from Dad's old job at the insurance company. Papers that should have been destroyed or returned when he retired 5 years ago. Emma found the light switch, and suddenly the room was illuminated by harsh fluorescent bulbs. What we saw in full light made my stomach drop. This wasn't just an office, it was a surveillance center. One wall held a bank of monitors connected to what appeared to be security cameras. As my eyes adjusted, I could see multiple camera feeds: the front of our house, the kids' school playground, my workplace parking lot. Mom, is that our house? Emma asked, pointing to one of the monitors. It was clear as day. I could see my own front door, my driveway, the tree I'd planted last spring. The timestamp in the corner showed the current date and time. I felt sick. My own father, had been watching us, not just occasionally, but systematically, professionally. The filing cabinets were labeled with names I recognized: neighbors, Emma's teachers, my coworkers. Even my ex-husband's name was on one of the folders. With trembling hands, I opened the file labeled with my own name. Inside were photographs spanning years, me leaving for work, picking up the kids from school, grocery shopping, talking to neighbors. Bank statements I'd never given him, medical records that should have been private, even copies of texts I'd sent to friends. Emma, I said, my voice barely steady, we need to go upstairs. Now, but Mom, what is all this? We'll talk about it later. Right now, we need to leave this room and not mention it to anyone. Do you understand? She nodded, sensing the urgency in my voice. We turned off the lights, climbed the stairs, and closed the door. I moved the shelving slightly to better conceal the entrance, my mind racing with questions and implications. Upstairs, dinner continued as if nothing had happened. Dad carved the roast while sharing stories about his retirement activities. Mom fussed over the kids, making sure they ate their vegetables. Everything looked normal, peaceful, loving, but I couldn't stop staring at my father. This man who had taught me to ride a bike, who had walked me down the aisle at my wedding, who brought the kids birthday presents and never missed a Christmas. This man had been spying on us with the thoroughness of a professional investigator. I managed to get through dinner by focusing on the kids, laughing at their jokes and deflecting their questions about my obvious distraction. But as soon as we'd finished cleaning up, I announced that we needed to leave early. Leave? Mom looked disappointed. But you just got here yesterday. I thought you were staying until Sunday evening. Work emergency, I lied. I'm sorry, but we really need to get back. Dad studied my face carefully. For a moment, I was terrified he somehow knew what we'd discovered, but he just nodded and helped carry our bags to the car. The drive home was torture. Emma kept asking whispered questions that I couldn't answer with Jake in the car. I kept checking my rearview mirror, wondering if we were being followed, wondering how long this surveillance had been going on. Once we got home and I'd gotten both kids settled, I sat Emma down for the conversation I'd been dreading. What we found today, I began, was something Grandpa has been doing that he shouldn't have been doing. He's been watching people without their permission, including us. Like a spy, Emma asked. Sort of. But not the good kind of spy from movies. The kind that invades people's privacy. Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked, are we in trouble? Did we do something wrong by finding it? No, sweetheart. You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes adults make bad choices, and this is one of those times. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about all the times Dad had known things he shouldn't have known, details about my work, comments about people I'd barely mentioned to him, his uncanny ability to show up when I was having difficult days. I'd always thought he was just being a caring father. Now I realized he'd been gathering intelligence. The next morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day researching. What I found made everything worse. Dad hadn't just been watching us casually. The equipment in that room was professional grade, expensive, and sophisticated. This wasn't a hobby, it was an operation. I also discovered something that chilled me to the bone. Some of the surveillance equipment could record audio as well as video, which meant that conversations I'd thought were private might have been monitored for years. By Wednesday, I'd made my decision. I couldn't confront my parents directly, not yet. I needed help and I needed evidence. So I called my cousin Marcus, who works in cybersecurity, and asked him to meet me for coffee. Marcus listened to my story with growing alarm. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Sarah, he finally said, what you're describing isn't just creepy, it's illegal. Your father could be facing serious criminal charges. I know, I said, but he's still my father and Emma's grandfather. I can't just call the police without trying to understand why he's doing this. Marcus offered to help me document everything before confronting Dad. The following Saturday, while my parents were at their weekly bridge game, Marcus and I returned to the house. Emma stayed with a friend. I didn't want her involved any further. The secret room was exactly as we'd left it. Marcus brought his own equipment and spent 3 hours photographing everything, copying files, and documenting the surveillance setup. What he found was worse than I'd imagined. The surveillance had been going on for at least 7 years, starting shortly after my divorce. Dad had files on everyone in my life: friends, coworkers, dates I'd gone on, Emma's teachers, even my therapist. He'd been tracking my bank account, monitoring my social media, and recording phone conversations. But the most disturbing discovery was a folder labeled Protection Protocols. Inside were detailed plans for various scenarios: what to do if I started dating someone Dad disapproved of, how to intervene if I made financial decisions he disagreed with, even contingency plans for gaining custody of the kids if he deemed me an unfit parent. "Sarah," Marcus said, his face pale, "your father has been treating you like a target under investigation. This goes way beyond overprotective parenting." That evening, I called my parents and asked to meet them the next day. Just the three of us. I told them I had something important to discuss. They agreed, though Dad seemed hesitant. Mom suggested meeting at their house, but I insisted on a public place, a coffee shop downtown where I'd feel safer. The confrontation was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I sat across from my parents, looking at these people I'd loved and trusted my entire life, and told them I knew about the room. Dad's reaction was telling. He didn't deny it, didn't act surprised, didn't try to claim ignorance. He just sighed deeply and asked, "How much did you see?" "Everything," I said. "The cameras, the files, the surveillance equipment." "All of it." Mom looked genuinely shocked. "Robert, what is she talking about?" That's when I realized Mom didn't know. Dad had been conducting this operation without her knowledge, which somehow made it both better and worse. Dad's explanation, when it finally came, was a mixture of genuine concern and disturbing control issues. He claimed he'd started watching me after my divorce because he was worried about my judgment. He said he wanted to protect me and the kids from potential threats. "But Dad," I said, "you were tracking my therapy sessions. You were monitoring my bank account. You had plans to try to take my children away from me." "That's not protection, that's stalking." The conversation went on for over 2 hours. Mom cried. Dad alternated between defensive justifications and grudging apologies. But what became clear was that he truly believed he'd been doing the right thing. The aftermath has been complicated. I reported the surveillance to the police, though I asked them to handle it quietly given Dad's age and the family situation. He's facing charges, but his lawyer is confident they can work out a plea agreement. Mom has moved in with my aunt temporarily while she processes everything. She's as much a victim in this as I am, maybe more so. Finding out that your husband of 40 years has been living a double life is devastating at any age. The kids know that Grandpa made some bad choices and that we won't be visiting for a while. Emma understands more than Jake does, but both of them are handling it better than I expected. As for me, I'm in therapy again, with a new therapist in a new office that's nowhere near any of Dad's surveillance zones. I've had security specialists sweep my house and found 3 hidden cameras, all professionally installed. The violation feels overwhelming some days, but there's also relief. For years, I felt like Dad knew me better than I knew myself, like he could read my mind. Now I understand why. The mysterious phone calls when I was having bad days, the uncanny timing of his visits, the way he always seemed to know exactly what was happening in my life, it all makes sense now. Emma asks me sometimes if she did the right thing by showing me that door. I always tell her yes, because secrets that big don't stay hidden forever, and it's better to know the truth, even when it hurts. The hardest part is grieving the father I thought I had while learning to understand the father I actually have. He's not a monster. I truly believe he thought he was protecting me, but he's also not the man I thought had raised me. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Emma hadn't found that door. Would Dad have kept watching us indefinitely? Would I have ever discovered the truth? But then I remember something Emma said to me last week. "Mom, even if the truth is scary, isn't it better to know it than to live in a lie?" She's 12 years old, and she's wiser than I was at twice her age. The surveillance has stopped, I've made sure of that. The cameras have been removed, the equipment disconnected. Dad is getting professional help to understand why he thought this behavior was acceptable. Our family will probably never be the same, but maybe that's not necessarily a bad thing. Maybe the family we're building now, based on truth instead of secrets, will be stronger in the end. Sometimes the people who love us the most are the ones capable of hurting us the deepest. But I'm learning that love without trust isn't really love at all. It's just control dressed up in good intentions. And Emma, she's learned that curiosity can lead to difficult discoveries, but that doesn't mean we should stop being curious.